Hey guys, welcome to another video for a part that there is no video for. This time we're going to be going over the power steering pump as well as its assemblies. As always, I'm going to be going according to the service manual. I'll be providing torque specs, part numbers, and tools needed. I want this to be as informational as possible, yet simple, so that it's easier to understand. So without a doubt, let's get to it. So the steps to remove the powering steering pump, there's only a few. First and foremost, you'll need to remove all the power steering fluid from the reservoir as much as you can. After that, you'll remove the air cleaner, pretty much the air cleaner box. After that, you'll remove the power steering pulley and then the power steering pump. Then of course the install is the reverse of that order. Now when removing the power steering fluid, you can do that however you'd like. I use a turkey baster just to suck up the fluid, and I use a water bottle as a container. Pretty straightforward. Just dip it in, get as much as you can out. I got some dirty fluid, so it's needed to be changed for a while. And that's about it. It's how you remove that fluid. Now I do want to make a note here. If your power steering fluid is that dark, you got a problem. Not only that, mine has a slight hint of a burnt smell that clearly shows this vehicle has never been properly serviced as far as the power steering fluid has gone. Please get your power steering fluid serviced at least every 50,000 miles at the most. I would try to do it before then as well. That is a service not a lot of people get done to their vehicles, so do keep that in mind. Alright, so the next step of this process is we got to remove the airbox cleaner. Number one thing, don't forget to unhook the MAF sensor, which connects right here. You do not want to pull any of those harnesses. So if you notice, in order to get the airbox out, we got the intercooler pipes in the way. There's a couple different ways you can do this. You can either unhook the pipes from down under from the clamps, but if you're like me and you want to remove as least parts as possible, I would just undo this clamp here, and on the stock intercooler pipes here, there are a little post that comes down and connects here. Just undo that and you can scoot that out of the way so that you have room to take this off. And that's pretty much it. So yeah, just take that, you can scoot that up, that way you can take this out, scoot that over, pop that up, and then you do really want to remove this clamp right here so that you can just unhook that, undo the bolt up front, and the air cleaner assembly can come straight up. Now when you're removing the air cleaner box assembly, you do have two choices as well. There is a star hex bolt right here that you can undo, take out, or you got the two bolts right here, which may be a little bit more of a trouble since you got to lift it up and there's not a whole lot of clearance. So if you have a star bolt, that'll be a lot easier on you. So I'm going to be using the star bolts, that way I don't have to worry about the clearance of those studs, and it'll be a lot easier on my part. I do want to mention that if you're going the star bolt route, there's a nut on the bottom of this, so be sure not to lose that. And the size of the star is T30. Alright, so for those wanting to know, the bolt up front is going to be right here. It's a 10mm bolt. Alright, now that everything is out right there, should be able to just pull up, pull out. And up she goes. go ahead and make a quick note here. You do have to remove this little guy here. There's just a clamp right here. It's a 8mm clamp, so the area you're accessing is going to be right down here. So another thing here, since the area we need to get in is right down here, there's a lot of fuses, a lot of wiring harnesses in the way, so it's probably best just to, there's a nut right here that'll help move them over, but you'll probably just want to try to move everything over as much as possible just so you have enough room. Alright, show y'all what the inside of this here looks like. So here we can see the power steering pump. Here's the belt. As you can see, there's some glazing there, so it does need to be replaced. You'll be removing this fitting. There's the flange. Right here is the tensioner. It's a 15mm socket. You do have to act like you're tightening it. It's reverse, not loosen. So when you tighten it, it's going to loosen that belt. Alright, now there is a clamp right here that you do need to undo on this rubber hose. This goes straight to the reservoir of the power steering reservoir. So, and once you do that, a bunch of fluid's going to go out. Not too much though, because you did drain that reservoir. Alright, so I got that hose and the clamp off. So the next thing that we'll be taking care of is going to be that little nut there. That is a 18mm, and you can only use an open wrench on that, so just be mindful of that. Okay, so I got that fitting off, and I have that set to the side right now so that I have more access for the pulley remover. Now, if y'all don't know what that looks like, this is what the pulley remover looks like. It's several different pieces in one, and this is how it works here. You can pause that if you need to read that better. So the way this works is you got this sleeve here holds these two jaw pieces together. These are what goes around the pulley and pulls it, and you twist this, and these also grab onto this fitting and it pulls it, and that's what you'll use to be removing it, and this keeps it all together so that it doesn't you know, fall apart on you. Okay, so this is what the installer, or not the installer, the remover will look like in place. I did have to grind down the tip that goes into the shaft a considerable amount, probably 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch, just so that this piece would slide on and bite the thread on this one. So just keep that in mind. If you buy this tool, you will have to grind it down, probably about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch. But other than this, this is the piece that you're going to tighten while you hold that still so that it pulls off the pulley. Hey guys, so this is actually 24 hours after I recorded the power steering pump remover. As you can see, the pulley is damaged on the flange. That is because the remover damaged the flange. I did some research on this and come to find out the torque required, or the power required to take this off, actually damaged the flange. The metal GM used is very malleable, and a lot of people experiences damage to their pulley when removing them. So what I had to do, as you can see, I have an assembly here. So we got the pulley, the power steering pump, the tensioner for the power steering belt, and the power steering bracket. So in order to get the power steering pump off, the pulley needs to come off, which I couldn't do that. the bolts for the power steering pump are behind the pulley, thus you can't take off the pump without the pulley. A way to work around is the bracket. There's 3 bolts here. They're 15mm sockets. The torque to put those on is 50 foot-pounds. Whenever you do this, your tensioner is attached to it, so just be mindful of that. If I'm going to go ahead and replace this because it looks like the bearings are going out on this tensioner. So looks like I'm moving more than just the power steering pump today, and looks like I'll be ordering a new bracket since I can't get this off. I may just break it off, but we'll see. So just be mindful of that. If this is damaged, you gotta take it off with the bracket. Alright, so this is 5 days later. I now have all the parts that I need. I did go ahead and order a bracket, since to come to find out, these brackets are now discontinued. Very hard to find, just like the steering pump and the pulley. So I went ahead and bought a new one, and as you can see, there is a major difference. Old, new. I'm not sure what these little dots there are for, but oh well, they're not on this one. Same pulley, same model number. Here is the pulley. As you can see, I never got the pulley off, so I kind of had to do a workaround. The only way I could get this off of that, well, that one, is I had to grind a divot in here so that I could make way for the bolts right here. I would have just ordered these ones too, but that's a lot of hassle because these aren't really sorted by number. There's not a number on them. I mean, you got the thread type, but still. Yeah, so I just took them right out of there. So now I have an extra, which is good in the end. Here's the new pulley. Here's the new pump. I hope this is the last time I have to deal with this. This has ended up being a pain. I hope y'all never have to do what I do. If this comes off with no problem with an installer or a remover, hats off to y'all. Props. That's not my case. I need help with this. But, hey, got it off. And now I just got to install it. Okay, so we're going to install the tensioner. This is the mount bracket. You got your tensioner here. They are slotted so that they will only go on a certain way. So it will be in that orientation. The bolt here is a 1/2 inch socket. And the torque required for this is 16 foot-pounds or 22 Newton meters. Okay, next we're going to be installing the power steering pump onto the bracket. You'll be using these 3 bolts, which will be torqued at 16 foot-pounds. You'll be using a 1/2 inch socket or a 13mm socket. When installing the bracket to the engine mount, you'll be using 3 bolts as well. They are 43 foot-pounds. And when installing the pump onto the bracket, it'll be mounted like so. Also, another quick note, when installing the input here, this will be 20 foot-pounds, but you'll be using an open wrench, so you can't really use a torque wrench there. So make it snug, but not too tight. So I wanted to show y'all the differences in removers. So when I bought the Performance Tool remover and installer, this is what it gave me for the installer. As you can see, it's threaded, as is the inside of the power steering pulley. But the only problem is it doesn't bite. It just kind of slides in and out. So this was specifically for a GM vehicle from 2007 to 2010, and they just don't fit the bill. So what I went ahead and did is I went and I bought the specific model installer, which is the J-25033C. This is what's referenced in the service manual for the Pontiac. For the Saturn Sky, it's a different model number, but they're the exact same pulley. So I went ahead and bought the exact model for the Solstice. That is a Kent Moore brand, or SPX. This is the exact, just so that y'all can have that information here. So Kent Moore SPX. They also own OTC. OTC is the brand for the Saturn Sky remover and installer. It's SA2916-C, or 2 and 1. But this is for the Pontiac. I did not buy the installer because I kind of already messed up on that with the performance tool installer. So don't buy aftermarket if you're wanting to have a longer time with your power steering system. Mine also came with the extreme pressure lubricant. This will come in handy when installing, so this was a nice find. I paid $20 for the installing set, so if you can get lucky, they're all on eBay. So when it comes to installing, this top nut here is going to be 3/4 socket or wrench. I'm going to be using a gear wrench. That's going to help out tremendously due to the leverage. This takes a high amount of torque to get this on. This nut here is, you can either use a Crescent wrench or it's going to be a 1 1/8 size. So it's a pretty big wrench. They're like $30 if you buy a Craftsman brand 1 1/8 at Lowe's. I would just recommend using a big old Crescent wrench. So I got my big old Crescent wrench for this one. When I bought the installer, it also came with this, as I showed earlier. It's extreme pressure lubricant. This is going to help out tremendously. When you install the lubricant, you're going to do it on the outside of this pulley. As you can see, I already have a generous amount on there. I kept it away from the top and away from the bottom gaskets. I didn't want to keep any on, I didn't want any on those gaskets. So as you can see, I pre-lubed it. And then on the pulley, I did it on the inside here, on the inside diameter. I just did a thin layer. I did most of it on the outside here. So when you're using your installer, as I said earlier, it's threaded. Performance tools, it just slid in and out. With this one, it's a tight fit. So we're going to go ahead and get this thing on. Okay, so this will be your setup for when you're installing your pulley. Your installer, there are two different versions of this installer. One has this little block that's separate. I believe this is just some kind of aftermarket bearing. It's got bearings on the inside, so not really necessary for what I'm doing, but it helps keep it level and straight. Others will have this nut, and there will be a block that's circular, as if this is one piece altogether, these here. And so it doesn't really matter if they're separate or one piece, as long as it gets it on there. Now there is one thing as far as this install, as far as the service manual goes. It says the axial tolerance needs to be almost 0. What does that mean? It means this thing needs to be straight. It cannot be crooked, or it will affect the performance of your pulley and your engine system. So make sure this is straight when you're putting it on. Don't let it be crooked. So keep that in mind. Now when you're doing this, it's going to be kind of weird. So you got your crescent wrench here on the bottom, and what you're going to want to do is you're tightening the bottom one here, but in order to tighten it, it's kind of counter skewed. So you're going to act like you're loosening this bottom bolt or tightening the top. So just tighten the top, and that'll push it down onto the power steering pulley. The service manual says nothing about how far it goes down, so just keep going until you're on those gaskets, or until it goes all the way down. So the bigger wrenches you have, the easier this is going to be, as well as the lubricant. So okay, so we're done installing it. Now some of you may be thinking or questioning, well, how do I know when to stop? So I would shoot for being level with the pulley pumps, little nipple right here. I would try to get that flush. Now as you can see, I kind of overshot it a little bit. It's over by about 1 centimeter, but this piece, it does wiggle a little bit, so I'm sure this will sit high a tiny bit, which should be perfectly in line with my tensioner. Now as far as the axial tolerance, when you use one of these, it's completely level. That is a-okay. So it should be completely in line with both the tensioner and the harmonic balancer, with no wiggle room whatsoever, which is exactly what we need. So once again, shoot to get this flush. I did overshoot it a little bit. I definitely wouldn't undershoot it, but try to get that flush. So definitely be checking every now and then to make sure that's flush. So now that we have our pulley on, I do want to go ahead and take some time and show y'all the performance tool installer and where they fail. So they say it's specifically for GM, but there were a lot of issues with this installer. This little piece here, it goes on the bottom of the remover. I'm sorry, it's a remover. But this is designed to push as the jaws grab here. But since it's kind of a not universal and remover, but a universal GM remover, as you can see, there's some gaps here, and it's kind of an oblong shaped. Well, that leaves some room for error, and we already know there's room for error as the remover itself was completely dysfunctional for what we're doing here. So buy the correct tools. Do not buy aftermarket. These honestly, this remover is possibly what damaged my pulley in the first place. I read a lot of not reviews, but forums as far as the pulleys malfunctioning when pulling them off. But after doing this removal and replacement, I've come to find out it's not really the pulley's problem, it's the tool's problem. You're not buying the correct tools as far as the service manual goes. So always check with your service manuals. Always check for the correct information. If they say it's for GM, be careful. So learn from my mistakes. Alright guys, thanks for watching the video. I hope it was as informational as it was helpful. I'll be posting the links in the description for the service manual pages so that you can read those personally. I'll also be providing part numbers, torque specs, and the tools needed in there as well. I hope this helped y'all out, and if y'all would like to see more, just let me know. I do this solely because there's no videos like these out there. So as always, y'all take care, and don't forget to torque the spec.